This is Rick Knowlton of AncientChess.com. I had the good fortune of meeting with Ed Trice a couple weeks ago, and among other things, he went over a very exemplary game of Gothic chess with me. For those who might be unfamiliar with Gothic chess, it's an 80-square chess variant that fixes the defect of Capablanca's chess, and the result is a much more playable game. We've got a video on how that was fixed coming up. The new pieces are Archbishop, which moves like a knight or like a bishop, and the Chancellor, which moves like a knight or like a rook. Here's the starting configuration of the board. White in this game is Ed Trice, the inventor of Gothic chess in the year 2000. His opponent is Jon Fredrik Asvang of Norway, a 1900-rated FIDE player from the city of Sortland. The game opens with d4, one of the most popular and most flexible openings in Gothic chess. Black replies with knight h6, a natural developing move, familiar to most chess players as well. And after knight h3, d5, g3, g6, we have a symmetric arrangement where both players are about to deploy their kingside bishops. Ed issues the first attack of the game with knight c3. This strikes at the d5 pawn with the knight on c3 and the bishop on h1. Black defends the c-pawn and plays c6. This is a common opening in Gothic chess, and both sides clearly have equal chances. After bishop g2, bishop g7, both sides are one move closer to castling, needing only to activate their archbishops in order to do so. But as we shall see shortly, each archbishop has an important role to play in safeguarding the home front. They each watch over their corresponding h-pawns, which must be defended against encroachment by adversarial knights. Any knight that is so positioned to lash out against either h2 or h7 is also threatening a knight fork with check, which wins the rook stationed on the j-file. For this reason, it is mission critical to properly prepare the deployment of one's archbishop. Otherwise, it is tasked with the nursemaid duty, tending to the h-pawn rather than exuding its full strength in the open field. With bishop f4, white marks his intent to fight for control of the e5 square, and black will seek to counter this lunge with two pawn moves of his own, starting with move 6, f6. Notice how this pawn move supports the one to follow for black. White mirrors his pawn by playing 7, f3, but his purpose is entirely different. White wants to make sure that the black knight on h6 is denied access to the g4 square, which puts pressure on the all-important h2 location, the source of the dreaded knight fork. Black can still threaten it via the landing at I4, but at present, this is not the number one priority. Black connects the pawns to repel white's bishop after 7 e5, and the swap 8 d takes e5 and x takes e5 is the logical follow-through. White must relocate his bishop, and the perfect post is now available with 9 bishop g5, striking the black queen. Notice how the white knight on h3 perfectly supports the bishop on g5 as it strikes at the interior of black's camp. This is an important distinction in Gothic chess, as opposed to where the bishops land on the corresponding ranks in a regular 8x8 chessboard. For instance, in the Roy Lopez opening on the 8x8 chessboard, white's bishop b5 move strikes at the black knight on c6 from outside. Similarly, in the Nimzo Indian defense, the black bishop on b4 strikes at the white knight on c3 from the outside. The wider 10x8 board in Gothic chess, combined with the well-thought-out placement of the pieces, provides bishops with extra positional power in the opening since they can attack the major pieces in cases like the one just demonstrated. In this game, black defends in the normal fashion with 9 bishop to f6, which is a typical motif in Gothic chess. With all of his minor pieces developed, white plays 10 queen to d2, holding onto the g5 post from a distance, and now getting his fifth piece into the action. Notice after the trades initiated by black with move 10, bishop takes g5, and white's recapture, 11, knight takes g5, that Ed on white's side has a huge lead in development. 4 pieces in play versus just 1 minor piece for black. We call attention to white planting the knight on g5, not the queen. This follows from what was alluded to previously, namely, that from g5, the knight surveys the h7 square, which it could capture onto with check, should the archbishop not guard that square. But if the black archbishop cannot deploy, how could his king ever castle kingside? This is a very good question, which is answered by the alert move, black, move 11, archbishop to f6. Notice from its post on f6, the black archbishop still defends h5 using its knight component. With the white bishop controlling the dark squares removed from play, remaining on this dark square on f6 is no longer a major concern. Another benefit from the f-pawn move by white earlier is the freeing of his own archbishop. Here it generates an unwelcome check with move 12, archbishop to c5, check. With black's move 12, king to g7, black takes things in stride. He'll later move the rook from j8, then retreat the king to the back rank, effectively castling the hard way, castling by hand. But now white is faced with his first defensive task of the game. The white knight on g5 is being attacked twice by black and is only defended once. Also, the pawn on I2 is under attack by the black bishop on c8. It would seem that knight h3 is the logical choice for white, as the knight would interfere with the attack on I2 while simultaneously getting out of harm's way. But as Ed tells me, he rarely retreats if he can help it, so he keeps the knight where it is and plays h4 instead. This was setting a subtle trap for black if the bishop were to grab the I2 pawn in this variation. Study the diagram shown here, and now mentally note that if black plays bishop takes I2, then white responds g4. It seems to allow the bishop to take the rook on j1, while the pawn now at g4 shuts off the black bishop from an unscathed retreat. If black takes the rook with bishop takes j1, then white would play knight to e6 check, winning the queen at d8. It's a complicated position, at best unclear, as white parts with both the rook and knight as well as the pawn on I2 in exchange for the black queen. Not to mention the positional defects associated with the kingside mess that'll be left behind. So in the game, Jon Fredrik Asvang sensed the danger and just made a simple move with move 13, knight to a6, chasing away the archbishop. It will have residual consequences later, as the knight remains out of play for most, if not all, of the game, despite some attempts to reactivate it. White should probably play it safe here with a full retreat to g1, but that is not Ed's preferred playing style. Plus, playing archbishop to g1 would require another archbishop move, such as archbishop h2, before white could castle kingside. Ed played move 14, archbishop f2, thinking his opponent would not like the taste of his response, bishop takes I2, then white playing rook to I1, followed by black's bishop to d7, white's rook takes I7, and then black playing rook to I8. That would be followed by the challenging move, knight takes h7, with a double-edged play after rook takes I7, followed by knight takes f6, with black playing rook to I1 check. White would follow with bishop to h1, black would play chancellor takes f6, and although this leaves an ugly position for both sides, black is better. Black avoids the complications and just wants to increase his own king's safety with move 14, rook to f8. But this is a strategic notion that was not backed up by tactical evaluation. Sharper would have been if he'd played e4, and if white castled, then he'd be in for another pawn surprise with black playing e3. If white responded with archbishop takes e3, then black has d4, threatening the archbishop on e3 and the knight on c3 simultaneously. So play continues with move 15, castles, followed by black playing king to h8 and tucks his king into the back rank once again. Now with white's next move, bishop to h3, white is contesting the very important diagonal c8 to j1 with his king in close proximity. Black makes the lackluster move knight to c7 to at least get that knight off its ostracized post at a6. What happens next is not common in regular 8x8 chess. White captures an undeveloped piece with bishop takes c8 because it is actually the strongest presence among black's minor pieces. Notice, after queen takes c8, white plays archbishop to h3. The archbishop is now striking the black queen. With white's position well fortified around the archbishop and the king, there's no reason for the black queen to capture. So black moves 18, queen to d8, losing yet another tempo. A near idealistic position for white is reached with move 19, chancellor to g2. This completes the development of all the super major pieces, that would be the chancellor, archbishop, and queen, and leaves the white rooks connected in the back rank with the castled king. There are no defects in the white position. He must now choose a region to begin the attack. Note that black's next move, queen to e7, is a third move of the black queen, stacking it vertically with the chancellor, but it is still only one square from where it started. This is not effective usage of such a long-range piece. White makes a subtle move, g4, move 20, which sets up a knight g5 to anywhere move, followed by g4, g5, and the dual capture threat to the archbishop and knight. Black deals with this by retreating archbishop to d7. White seizes the opportunity for a double attack on h7 with move 21, archbishop to i5. And there is no point in chasing it away with the likes of, say, black playing pawn j6. That would be followed by archbishop takes h7, queen takes h7, white's knight takes h7, black's king takes h7, and then white plays g5, causing all kinds of trouble. White must resist the temptation to create something pretty with knight to g6 check, even though the response, king to i8, leaves both the knight and archbishop hanging. They can both still hang because move 23, archbishop to j3, followed by h takes i6, falls into the same trap avoided by the original king move to i8, namely archbishop takes g6, forking the black queen. But black plays correctly, move 21, chancellor to g7, and the fireworks are about to start. Notice how the black knight on h6 is overburdened with the defense of j7. Ed Trice plays move 22, knight I to h4, and he gives that 2 exclamation points. He passively sacrifices his own knight in order to remove the guard. White will get an incredible attack for this sacrifice. Black plays knight takes i4, followed by white's move 23, archbishop takes j7 check. This repels the king since i8 is under the archbishop's control, so black responds king to g8 as a forced move. It's easy to see move 24, queen takes i7, follows, which is vertically attacking the dislodged black knight, as well as threatening an upcoming queen to h8 check, or archbishop to h7 checkmate if the knight ever moves. Black may have allowed this whole line of play because his response, h5, seems to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. 1, the pawn now defends the knight on i4, and 2, the black chancellor and queen have combined to defend the rank by attacking white horizontally. If black forces the trading of white's strongest pieces from the board, he's survived this wave of attack. White's move, archbishop to i6, check, puts a pin in that balloon, and after black's move, chancellor takes i6, white does not take the black queen off the board. Queen takes e7 looks tempting, but Black has rook to f7 as a resource, which leaves the queen little choice to get out of dodge. After move 26, queen takes i6, Black plays queen to h7, move 27, g takes h5, queen takes i6, move 28, White plays h, takes i6. White has won another pawn and created a passed pawn that does not appear all that dangerous at first glance. In the first place, it's not connected to any pawn chain. And in the second place, there are no pieces supporting it either. This will change very quickly, however. Black summons the archbishop back to reality with move 28, archbishop to f5, and White stacks the rook under the chancellor in the g-file with rook at a to g1, noting that Black has no time for the frivolity of archbishop takes c2, since White would play e4. That would shut down the archbishop's defense of the real target of White's scope, the g6 pawn. Black defends the g6 pawn from the side with rook to f6, which is almost always worse than placing your rook behind your pawn. White keeps the pressure up with move 30, h5, connecting up with the i6 passed pawn and exploiting the pin at g6. After Black responds king to g7, protecting his pressured pawn, White shifts focus and at last begins the final phase of the attack. Move 31, chancellor to i3. Black responds, knight to h6. Move 32, chancellor to i5, chasing the black knight and threatening the deadly chancellor check on h7. It's just a matter of time before Black's defensive resources will be whittled away, and move 32, Black's rook to h8 is forced to hold h7. White's move e4 is probably an unexpected jolt. While it's not anything earth-shattering, it was a sleeping pawn that has been quiet all game long. Notice that if Black played d takes e4, White's f takes e4 puts the Black archbishop in the same predicament. So Jon, playing Black, just retreated his archbishop with move 33, archbishop to e7 to maintain one more defender of the g6 pawn under fire. One of the last nails in the coffin comes with White playing h takes g6, which secures h7 for the upcoming chancellor check, springing the I-pawn free to harass the black rook. Black responds knight to e6, but it's too little too late, and his knight has no role in the latter half of the game. Move 35, I7, dislodges the rook from defending the h-file, and after Black's response, rook to i8, White strikes with chancellor to h7, and Black resigns. There are several ways checkmate could be delivered at this point. The most intriguing one is king to g8. White plays chancellor, takes h6 check, king to f8. White plays chancellor, takes i8 check, archbishop to g8. White plays chancellor, takes g8 check, king to g8. And finally, i8 becomes a chancellor, checkmate. I hope you find this video presentation interesting. If you'd like to buy a Gothic chess set, I, on ancientchess.com, am an authorized reseller. Through eBay, there's a link shown at the bottom of your screen. Ed Trice, the inventor of Gothic chess, is coming out with his first book on Gothic chess on July 2019. The title of the book is, quite appropriately, The First Book of Gothic Chess. You may find more information on this book through my eBay listings and on the official Gothic Chess website located at gothicchess.info. Thanks very much for watching, and we've got lots more coming up on Gothic Chess. I hope you enjoy it.